Hey book lovers, Victoria here and you're watching My Books and Me, back in front of my bookshelves again, which by the way, it feels weird sitting here and seeing all this awesomeness behind me, but I'm glad I'm sitting here because I have these bookshelves and I'm not using them as a backdrop like I used to. So anyway, so today I'm here with my next wrap-up video. This is me surpassing my original 2017 reading goal, which I've since bumped up. So this is books 56 to 64. There's 9 books here. I'm just going to do all 9 of them because it's just easy that way. So let's get going. So the first book is I Hate My Selfie by Shane Dawson. This is his first non-fiction book and it was really good. I talked about it a little bit in my, I don't know if that video's gone up yet. I talked about it in my audiobooks recommendations video, so whether that video is up yet or not, then you might know about it. If not, then check that video out when it goes up. But I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoy Shane's videos, which is essentially obviously why I got the book to begin with, because I love his content and I watched his couple of short films that he did from chapters of the book and they were really interesting, so that's why I went out and picked up the book. I ended up listening to this one on audiobook, but it was really good to hear Shane narrate his own story and I really enjoyed this book. If you are I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. If you are a fan of Shane, I definitely recommend picking it up if you haven't already. If you are not a fan of Shane or you don't really know who he is, definitely don't pick it up because I feel like you have to like Shane, or you have to have some knowledge of who he is to enjoy this book, because it is very much Shane Dawson in book form and he can be a little much for some people, and the way he tells stories and the way he words things can come across as different to how he intends to some people who don't necessarily know him, but I really recommend it if you're a fan of Shane, and I'm really excited to read his second book, It Gets Worse. Then I read Prime Minister by Ainsley Booth and Sadie Haller. This is the first book in the Frisky Beavers series. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This is an adult contemporary romance and it was really good and I really enjoyed it. I hadn't read anything by these 2 authors before, but it was free on iBooks and it sounded interesting, so I thought I'd download it and give it a go, and I'm really glad I did because I've now discovered a series and 2 authors that I'm really interested in reading more from. The book is about the Prime Minister of Canada, who is very much based on Justin Trudeau. He is this younger Prime Minister who is handsomely good looking and pretty much every woman across the country is in love with him. We have our main character Ellie, who is a university student currently doing her PhD, and she's taking some time off to do a little internship over the summer in the Prime Minister's office to do with her PhD, and she works very closely with the Prime Minister and she has to try and rein in the crush she has on him, just like every other woman in the country. But the Prime Minister also has eyes for her and it's really cute. It's a nice romance. There are definitely some sex scenes in there, just be aware of that. But it's also a really good introduction to the rest of the series. It's the first in a companion novel series, and the way I've thought of it and the way I've recommended it to a couple of friends of mine is it is very much Abby Glines but for adults. So if that's something you're interested in, I recommend this series. Then I read another adult contemporary romance, and that is A Beautiful Mistake by V. Khalid. This is a standalone novel and it was also really good. It's again another author that I hadn't read anything by, and it was another book that was free on iBooks, and it's another author that I'm really interested to read more from. So we have our main character Rachel, who is in a bar with her very drunk friend. Her friend points out this guy across the room saying, he is the guy who I've been seeing for the past month who happens to have a wife and kids. And so Rachel goes up to him and says that he's pretty much an ass, then finds out about 5 minutes later that that's not the guy her friend pointed out, that he's just a random guy in a bar who she's just accused of being a jerk to her friend. She apologizes, leaves, end of that. Next day, however, she is the teaching assistant for a new professor at the university who just happens to be the guy she abused the night before. His name is Kane, and he's quite good looking. And they have this really weird relationship dynamic where they're it's a bit arguey but kind of not, and they kind of both have feelings for one another but they kind of don't want to go there. Initially it's sort of because he is essentially her teacher, because apart from being the professor that she's being a teaching assistant to, he is also the professor who is her thesis professor. So they have this sort of really awkward little thing happening, but it also turns out that something that happened in Kane's past is always just floating at the back of his mind, and he never likes talking about it, but he learns that maybe Rachel is a little bit more connected to his past than he ever thought. And it was really good. I really liked this one. Again, 4 out of 5 stars. Recommend it if you're a contemporary romance fan. Then I read Sweet Little Lies by Abby Glines. This is the first book in the Sweet trilogy. This is an iBooks exclusive trilogy, so if you're a fan of Abby and you have iBooks, I definitely recommend checking it out. The first book came out in September. The second book is coming out this month, and the third book is coming out in November. In this series, we follow Bula, whose mother had died, and she was just given the name and address of this woman who she has no idea how she's connected to her mum, but she goes there, and this older woman lets her move in, gives her a job as like the housekeeper, and also allows her sister, who I can't remember the name of off the top of my head, who has Down syndrome. She even pays for her care at this special home sort of thing for like other people with Down syndrome, because she is too much for Bula to care for all the time when she has to work and everything. So it's this really nice place that she can stay in, and Portia, the woman she's living with, pays for that, lets her live at the house and work around the house. However, the summer is here, and Portia's son Jasper comes home for the summer, and he sort of finds out that Portia is paying Bula a hell of a lot of money because he doesn't realize about her sister. And eventually he finds out, and he wants to take care of Bula and her sister, and they kind of end up falling for one another. Jasper gives her a job at his office, which is really just a ruse to spend more time with him. But there are some secrets in the family closet that make life a whole lot more complicated for these two, and I tell you what, in classic Abby Glines style, she really just brought it in those final chapters, and I am so excited for the second book. I am nervous about where she's going to take this series. It's actually it's actually so weird to be reading a series that isn't a companion novel series and be reading it while she's releasing it and not knowing what's going to happen next, because of all the books that I've read where characters have spanned several books. I've been able to binge read them, and this I can't, but I'm really excited that we don't have to wait too long for the next book. If you're an Abby Glines fan, I definitely recommend it. It's very similar to her Russian Blair stories from the Too Far series and the Rosemary Beach series, but you guys know how much I love Abby and her books, so definitely read them. Then I read Dr. Bad Boy by Ainsley Booth and Sadie Heller. This is the second book in the Frisky Beaver series, and oh my god, this one just steps up from the first book. We got an introduction to Max at the end of the first book. He is a doctor who decides to move to Toronto, Vancouver, one or the other, wherever this story takes place. Toronto? I can't remember. He decides to move there, and he's going to meet his lawyers, so we can get lawyers for his new job and everything like that. And he meets Violet Roberts, whom he has already met 6 months prior at a hotel where they hooked up, and he thought that she was an escort, and she kind of got offended when she figured at the end that that's who he saw her as, and he was like, oh shit, that's not really who she is. And they've still got feelings for one another, so they try and embark on a relationship, but they don't want it to be public, especially because she is on his lawyer team, so kind of can't really go there because they're working together. And neither of them really want a relationship, but they both kind of want a relationship, and it's just very complicated. And it sort of starts off as being kind of a contracted thing every weekend, but it kind of gets more than that, and then Violet finds out something that changes the nature of their relationship. It's just really good. 4 out of 5 stars for this one as well. Then I read the epically awesome, and oh my god, I can't believe I have to wait a year for the next book, God's Grove by J. Kristoff. I made a full non-spoiler review video on this, so I'll link to that below. Just know that this was awesome, and it was everything I wanted in a sequel, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and J. Kristoff is cruel but amazing. Then I read another Abby Glines book, which was another one of her new releases, and then is After the Game, which is the third book in the Field Party series. This is a companion novel series, and this one followed Brody Higgins, who was featured quite heavily in the previous book, and his developing relationship with Riley Young, who was also introduced in the previous book, and we kind of got a scene between them that kickstarted their story. Riley used to live in the town of Lawton, and she was going out with Gunnar Lawton, who had the previous book, and while they were in a relationship, Rhett Lawton raped her, and she accused him of rape. And unfortunately, which is kind of bad when you read it in the book, and I don't like that aspect of this book, no one in the town believed her, because Rhett Lawton was like the golden boy of the entire town. So she ends up leaving with her parents. They move away, and she actually fell pregnant because of Rhett. So she ends up keeping the baby. It was a girl, called it Bryony, and they moved back to town. It's been 2 years, I think. Yeah, it's been 2 years because her grandmother is suffering from Alzheimer's and can't live alone, so the family moved back with her. And Riley is very firstly worried about returning to town because after everything she's been through, but she's kind of at a point where she doesn't care. She's got Bryony, she knows what she wants to do in life, and she knows that she's not going to be in town forever. She just needs to be there long enough to help her parents and to finish high school. And then they're going to finish her online high school, and then she's going to move and she's going to start off with a better life. In comes Brady one afternoon. It is pouring down rain, and he picks up Riley and Bryony on the side of the road and drops her home, and he sort of realizes then that everything he's ever thought about Riley for the past 2 years is completely wrong, and that she is alone in the world, that she has no one, and that it is because everyone in this town is quite honestly a jerk. And he's kind of at a point in his life where the shit is going down with his family, and he's kind of realizing that everything he's ever wanted from him, everything that's ever happened with him, he's starting to wonder if it's because he wanted it or if it's because his father wanted it. And him and Riley just kind of are each other's rocks, and it's really nice. The one thing I have to say about this book is that while it was very much an Abby Glines book, it didn't really have the drama that I've come to know and love about an Abby book. But I still really liked it, and I think I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, or maybe 4 stars. I think I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It was still really good, and I'm hoping that she will continue on with the Field Party series because there's some really interesting characters. Looking at what I actually did really enjoy about this is the first 3 books in this series are about the seniors on the football team, and they've now graduated. So this feels like very much the end of like the first story arc. And then the next 3 books are supposed, if they end up happening, about the new seniors. So this one felt very much like wrapping up all of the stories for the 3 couples that we've had for the past 3 books. But it was really, really good. Then I continued on the Frisky Beavers series by reading Full Mountie, which is the 3rd book. And this one, can I just tell you, was very interesting, to say the least. This one, we follow Beth, who is the Prime Minister's assistant, her relationship with Lachlan, who is the Prime Minister's head of security, and Hugh, who is one of the new members of the security team and who happened to have known Lachlan from 10 years ago. Now, apart from Beth being in a relationship with both of them, they're all in a relationship with the other 2. So this is a polyamorous book, which was quite interesting to read, to be honest, and the way that it was written, because it's about them sort of discovering that as much as they want to be in a relationship with like one of the other people, they kind of don't, and they work as like a trio, and I've never read anything like that before. And it was quite interesting the way it was written, in the fact that you kind of couldn't choose which couple you wanted to be together. You kind of shipped them all, and they just worked as a 3, and it was just interesting. That's really all I can say about that, because if I say any more, then that just gets intense. Once again, this one's very graphic and different, to be honest. If that's something you want to read, go for it. Then I read the 4th Frisky Beavers book, which came out this past month, and that was Mr. Herrick. And this one we follow Tate, who is a star hockey player who we've been introduced to in the previous books, and his relationship with Sasha, who was Ellie from the very first book's best friend. And in the previous book, Tate reveals that he has been traded to a team across the other side of the country, and so he has to move away from all these friends. And it's really at that moment when Sasha kind of becomes a little bit obsessed with him, in a way that she's kind of always appeared as though she doesn't really like him, but then kind of does in a way. In the end of the previous book, they had a hookup, and we flash forward like 2 months or something, and they're still very much thinking about one another, and they start off on a relationship, but Sasha doesn't really want to be in the public eye because she had a relationship in the past with another sports player, I think it was, and she was very much in the public eye, and she did some stupid things on social media which she had to try and recover from. But this was a really sweet book and I really liked it. It was definitely so much different to like the previous 2 books. I tell you what, this series kind of like went up, like escalated quickly, and then this one kind of was a bit of a chill, relaxed read compared to the previous 2. There's one more book in this series that's coming out next year. I'm really excited to read that one. But for all these books, I gave them 4 out of 5 stars. They're really good adult contemporary romances. If you are interested in reading that, you don't have to read them in order because they are companion novels, but I really recommend doing that because you get other characters in the backgrounds of the book. For example, Mr. Herrick. Was it Mr. Herrick? No. For example, Full Mountie had the wedding of Ellie and our Prime Minister. So you kind of have to read it like that to really get a grasp of all the stories involved. So they are all the books that I've read recently. I'm in the middle of some more books now. I'll definitely do another wrap-up video when I've read 5, because this is 20 minutes long now and I've talked about 9 books. I'll link below to the reviews I've written for all these books, and also my God's Grave review. Definitely check that out if you haven't already, and I will see you guys next week with another video. Bye!